Hello and welcome back to a series of spooky stories, The Haunted Teaspool. This series is brought to you by all things spooky and ungodly amounts of paranormal activity. This comes in a 2-pack. I showed it on the video last night. They're stackable and they're inexpensive. They're cute. It's down here if you want it. Now onto the story. My name is Dee, and this happened when I was around 12 at my auntie's house. Me and my cousin were the same age and would often be left alone after school at my aunt's house until she got off work and took me home. One day, me and my cousin were chilling and taking turns to shower. I went first, and when I came out, I laid on my cousin's bed as usual. She went to shower, and I got cold and pulled a blanket above my head while I was watching YouTube to pass time. I did this a lot because my auntie always left her house super cold. As you should, because if it doesn't feel like Antarctica, you're not doing it right. Suddenly, I felt a weight on the bed as if someone just sat down. I didn't think much about it and assumed that my cousin had finished her shower and I just didn't hear her. I watched my video for about 2 more minutes when I realized she hasn't said anything or moved. So I paused my video and realized I still hear the shower running. I freeze for a second and then slowly take the cover off. For what reason? Who wants to see the scary shit? I see no one, but the weight is still there and you can see an imprint as if someone is actually sitting down. I stare, and after about 5 seconds, it feels as if it stands up and the imprint disappears. I run to the bathroom full speed and sit outside the door until my cousin comes out. I would have went right in. I'll close my eyes. I'm not staying out here alone. I never told my cousin because they don't believe in paranormal and would have said that I imagined it. Ugh, that's just so irritating. I haven't pulled a cover over my head since, and I'm almost 21 now. I have a few other ghost stories in our house, but that's all for now. You got me fucked up. I will absolutely keep the covers over my head. 100%. I don't want to see nothing. I don't want to see it. Alexa, play Blind by SZA. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being the least scary, creepy, spooky, 10 being the most. If you have a story of your own that you want to submit, you can do so on the link tree in my profile. I will see you all at the next episode. Stay spooky, friends.
Okay, so we're going to take a break from my spooky stories, and I'm going to share someone else's spooky story. Now, when my parents lived in Yokosuka, they went to Virginia, and then they went back to Japan, Navy life, and they lived in Sasebo. Now, Sasebo, Japan was my favorite spot because it was older, quieter, slower pace. And I used to visit my family twice a year in Japan when I was living in California. Okay, so I didn't live in Sasebo. I was just visiting Sasebo. Now, my mom had shared a Facebook group with me that was all spouses talking about their paranormal experiences. This was like 8 or 9 years ago. And for some reason on this base, paranormal experiences kicked up, like paranormal activity kicked up when the husbands would deploy. Which I thought was pretty fucked up because it's like, okay, so now you're preying on like the vulnerable, right? Like all the husbands are gone and that's when all of this stuff would happen to these families still living in Sasebo on the military base. Now, a part of the military base was built on a cemetery. So there's a cemetery that extends past the base that you can actually see. You're like, oh my god, it's a cemetery. There was a Facebook story that I read that stuck with me for all these years. Now, my mom had her own spooky little mimic living in her house. I've already talked about my experience with that. I've also shared a story that happened where families, children were seeing faces looking in at them through their windows on like the 5th floor, the 9th floor. A place where you're not supposed to be seeing faces looking in at you. But this other story fucks me up. Excuse that. Fucks me up to this day. Now, this mom had posted in that Facebook spouses group that, of course, every time her husband would leave for deployments or training exercises, that some not okay things were happening. She said that every night around 12 a.m., the kids would come running into her room screaming. Now, she had 4 children and she lived in a 3-bedroom, like a little, I want to call it a townhome. What were they? They were like homes next to each other and they shared like a wall, but they were like individual little homes and you had towers, apartment towers. She wasn't living in a tower. She was living in those like little homes. And it was a 3-bedroom, so there was 2 kids per room, and her in the master bedroom where her and her husband sleep, right? Husband's gone. And she said that her kids would come in her room screaming at 12 o'clock in the morning. And at first she was like, okay, you know what? It's late. You need to go back to bed. You need to go back to bed. When she talked with her children, they told her that at 12 o'clock in the morning, sorry, someone walked by staring at me. They told her that they were getting pulled out of bed by their ankles and they would wake up on the floor. And my mind was like, okay, well then why don't everybody just like sleep together at night while daddy's gone? Right? Like, why don't we just all like pile into one bed? But I guess they tried that and nobody was getting good sleep. So she thought, okay, next step would be to put all of the kids in one room and have them all sleep together, kind of like a powers and number thing, right? And at first it was okay. There wasn't any activity. No one was getting yanked out of bed until one night. I'm sorry, this makes me so uncomfortable. One night, 12 o'clock again, the kids come running and screaming into mom's room. And what happened was one kid got pulled out of bed onto the ground, away from their bed, and the other kids saw it. And they tried to grab onto their little brother as he was getting pulled away from the bed. And when he stopped getting pulled, that's when they all got up and ran to mom's room. And the mom talked to the kids and she's like, are you sure? Are you sure this is exactly what's happening? And that little boy said yes. He said that he felt it. He said that he felt something cold and hard around his ankle, like a pressure pulling him, but he couldn't see what was pulling him, and it pulled him off of the bed. And that's all I know of the story. There was no follow-up post from her. There was no nothing. I don't know if they ended up moving to a different house. I don't know if they ended up moving to a different military base. I don't know if they ended up leaving Japan. Maybe he got orders. I don't know. But just imagining a child getting pulled from their bed onto the ground and still pulled is terrifying.
Somebody submitted a spooky story saying that New Orleans is haunted, and you may not want to watch this one at night. I'm gonna call the person who submitted the story Key. He says that she's been watching my videos for a while and she wasn't going to share this, but after what happened living in a house, she thinks she needs to. So Key moved to New Orleans about a year ago for work. She saved up for a long time because she didn't want to struggle or end up somewhere sketchy. So she made sure the house she got was actually nice, like not cheap at all. Everyone always says that the more expensive homes don't come with problems. And this is why none of this makes sense to her. The house was beautiful, old but renovated. High ceilings, big windows, hardwood floors. It even had one of those iron balconies. This was a dream place for Key. The only thing that Key didn't really check in the property was the basement, because the realtor just kind of rushed through it and said that the basement was just storage. Eventually, Key moves into the house. Nothing weird happened at first. For like 2 days, everything was normal. Then at night, she started hearing tapping. It wasn't loud like someone was knocking. It was just like this light tapping sound. Or she would hear something scraping. It sounds like fingernails on wood. And Key says this would only happen when she was in bed. Every time she got up to check, it would stop. She told herself that it must be pipes or animals or something. So about a week into staying into the house, the tapping sound is kind of intensifying. And at this point, she's really starting to question, what is that sound? It sounds like the tapping is coming from the basement. About a week later, she decided to go down in the basement during the daytime. He says it felt off immediately, like the air was heavier down there. And it was cold in a way that didn't make sense because it was literally hot outside. And there were boxes down there that weren't hers. They seemed pretty old. And Key remembers thinking that maybe the previous owner left stuff behind. Something about it felt wrong. Like maybe she shouldn't touch them. So as Key is looking around, she notices a small section in the wall that looked different. A hidden panel or something. And mind you, this wasn't like obvious unless you were looking. He says she doesn't know why, but she just opened it. And inside, there was this little space, almost like a hiding spot. And in there was a porcelain doll. He said the doll didn't look antique or valuable. It just looked old and creepy. Like someone made it to look like a child, but didn't fully understand what a child looks like, if that makes sense. The eyes were slightly too big and the mouth was stitched, not painted. Key remembers laughing a little because she thought that this was just some creepy decor that someone forgot. So she took the doll and brought it upstairs, and she said that was her first mistake. Well, that night, the tapping was louder than ever, but this time it wasn't coming from downstairs. It was coming from her bedroom, specifically from the dresser where she left the doll. Key said she did not sleep that night, just laid there listening to it, as if it was trying to get her attention. This doll literally tried to ruin this woman's life. Let's just say whatever spirit was inside of that doll was very angry. If you want to hear how the story continues and ends, leave a comment for part 2. Before you throw a fit in my comments, I always post part 2s. I have to get to work. The story, quite frankly, is way too long. So leave a comment for part 2.
No. None of it. None of it. One of my followers who would like to remain anonymous sent this story in, and I know it's supposed to be endearing in a way, but I don't know. I would have been creeped out the entire time. For the sake of the story, we're going to call this girl Maya. When Maya was 17 years old, her grandmother passed away. Maya says that she and her grandmother were super close. Like, she would go to her for anything and everything. So Maya's having a really hard time with this. And the family is making arrangements, and she's just kind of zoning out a lot and really just trying to grasp what has happened. So fast forward now to a few nights after the funeral. Maya goes to bed and she has a dream about her grandmother. She has a dream that she wakes up in her room. So she opens her eyes in this dream and her entire bedroom looks just how it always does. Everything is exactly the same as in real life. And she looks over and sees her grandmother sitting in a chair at the corner of her room. And her grandmother is just staring at her. She has kind of a half smile on her face, but mostly staring and watching her. And then after what feels like way too long, her grandmother just says, "I'm okay," and then just vanishes. So she wakes up out of her dream and realizes it indeed was a dream. However, she does describe that this dream felt super, super real, very vivid. She also mentions that when she wakes up out of this dream, her room is exceptionally cold, like way more cold than it should have been. So she kind of brushes it off. She's thinking grief dream makes sense until it happens again. So the next night she has this similar dream, and in the dream she wakes up, she's looking around her room, and of course she spots her grandmother, and this time she's standing over at the door. And again, she's just staring at her with this weird expression on her face. Ugh. No, thank you. And then after a little bit, she wakes up and again, she remembers that chill in the air. She also said she remembers that the room felt really heavy and she just can't get this out of her head. These dreams are so vivid. And she says at this point, she's almost expecting these kind of dreams. And almost every night she is experiencing in some way or another a dream that involves her bedroom that looks exactly like it does in waking life, and always her grandmother is looming there. Another thing she notes is that every single time she'd have this dream, her grandmother was always just a little bit closer each time. And she says in all of these dreams, her grandmother just stares and she says that she doesn't feel threatened. She feels calm about it. I mean, I don't know. For some reason, I just get this weird sinking feeling in my chest when I think about it. Like, how would I react to that? But yeah, she says she feels calm, almost like a familiar feeling. And she also mentions a feeling that something is building, like there's an anticipation or something. Okay, so again, on another night, same thing. She's dreaming that she is in her bedroom. She wakes up, and this time, her grandmother is directly next to her bed in her dream. Okay, and now her expression isn't calm anymore. It's serious, almost with like a furrowed brow. And I guess it could have been more like a face of concern. And she just looks down at Maya and she just says, "Don't open the door. Don't open the door. Don't open the door." And she just keeps repeating, "Don't open the door." Maya's like really creeped out. She's confused. She's like, "What are we talking about? Don't open what door? Is she talking about the front door, the back door, my bedroom door?" And in her confusion, she pops out of her dream again. She wakes up. But guys, so she is laying on her side. She says that when she opens her eyes from her dream, her grandmother is actually still there, standing next to her bed, staring at her, like exactly how she appeared in her dream. But the moment that she realizes that is what she is seeing, she vanishes. She says that the room is freezing. It is noticeably colder than all the times before, and that heaviness in the air is strong. She doesn't even know what to think of it, so she just lays there in bed, kind of scared and, well, obviously freaked out. She tosses and turns, and it takes a while, but she eventually does fall back asleep. Okay. Fast forward to the very next night. She is sound asleep, middle of the night, but she is awakened by the sound of a knocking on her door. And her entire body like locks up because she very much remembers what her grandmother had said. And the knocking is just slow and steady. It wasn't fast or urgent. And Maya describes it as feeling like whatever it was knocking knew she could hear it and wanted to get a rise out of her. But then she hears her mom's voice calling. She goes, "Hey, Maya, open the door." Maya says that this did sound a lot like her mom, but there was something off, something flat about it. I mean, and obviously she is not going to get up and open the freaking door. So she is laying there, frozen in fear, just listening. Obviously, Maya didn't get up, and then the voice says, "Open the door." And then again, "Open the door." Oh my God, I have freaking chills everywhere. Like, it's not even trying to pretend anymore. It just keeps repeating, "Open the door." So Maya lays there and does not sleep until the sun comes up. And eventually, whatever it was that was outside of the door stopped. And so it's daylight now. And Maya goes out and she locates her mother and she asks her, "Were you up in the middle of the night knocking on my door, asking me to open the door?" And of course, her mother is like, "No, what are you talking about?" So Maya is very confused and also terrified. She told her mother what had happened, but her mother didn't seem entirely convinced, which really sucks because I feel like we need to normalize. I've said this before, we need to normalize believing our children. Anyway, Maya says that since that night when she refused to open the door, she has never had any other dreams about her grandmother. She said she also has never heard any of that knocking or mimicking of her mother's voice outside her door again. All right, guys, what are your thoughts? You gotta let me know in the comments. Was this her past grandmother coming to protect her from something evil? Sure sounds like it. All right, drop your comments below. And if you have your own creepy story time, you gotta share it with me. And definitely follow for more creepy story time.
Want to get creeped out? Let's talk about the man in the fields ritual. Terrifying. Disclaimer, don't do this. Don't try this at home. Thank you. Am I still going to tell you about it? It's creepy and interesting. So sue me. So what is this ritual? Essentially, it's a ritual that gives you an entire year of safety, but at a cost. In return, you must survive a terrifying hide-and-seek-like ritual. Once you've finished the ritual, a figure called the Man in the Fields will appear in your yard, and he will stand silently in your yard until sunrise. If you mess up the ritual, you might see him in your house instead. So literally don't love that at all. It has a little bit of the Midnight Man, the Midnight Game, the Midnight Ritual, whatever the fuck you call it. It has a little bit of those vibes, but higher stakes and higher reward. Because like in the Midnight Game, is there any reward? I don't think so. But the rewards you get depend on when you start the ritual. What you need: a house with a backyard or garden, one room with only one door. This becomes your safe room, a candle or lantern, no electric light, a crucifix. You know it's going to be bad when you need a crucifix, and an analog clock or watch. No phones. So you have to begin the ritual after sunset, ideally at around 9 p.m. and at least 1 hour before midnight. The better the reward, the later you start the ritual, which means like the less time you have to figure all this out and not fuck yourself over. So if you begin the ritual 3 hours before midnight, you get physical safety for a year. No illnesses, no injury. You're going to be in perfect condition, okay? Brand new, squeaky clean. If you begin 2 hours before midnight, you get the physical safety plus financial safety. You would never want money for a whole calendar year. Should I do this visual? Just kidding. Please don't do this, but like seriously, I might have to. If you begin 1 hour before midnight, you get the prior two things: physical safety, financial safety for a year, but also your actions have no negative consequences in any way for 1 calendar year. So I don't know. Sounds a little crazy to me, but hey, that's not the point. The point is how terrifying this ritual is. The catch, of course, is that it is very unlikely you would be able to complete this ritual within an hour. Here's the beginning of the ritual, which we'll call the summoning, which right there. Let me tell you a little bit about what you're summoning, who the Man in the Fields is, or at least a little bit about him. He appears like a scarecrow at first, but he's not a scarecrow. He's tall. He has wrong proportions. Like his body, it doesn't make sense, which is so creepy. Oh God, but I love it. He's also missing his head. I don't know why that seems like a secret in this ritual, or like you can't say that. I don't know. Anyways, specifically in the ritual, they say he's missing a part of his anatomy similar to a specific horseman, which I'm seeing the headless horseman. So he's missing his head, but why is it like said so cryptically? I don't know. First step, there cannot be any people in your yard or in your home other than you. I hate that. You stand in your backyard facing the house. You say 7 times aloud, but who will scare the crows away? Creepy. If you hear nothing, this summoning has failed, and you're supposed to leave your house until 6 a.m. Feels dramatic, but whatever. If you hear a voice say, I will, it worked, and you're supposed to return inside and not look behind you. It does also say that maybe you just hear the voice in your head, okay? So it doesn't necessarily have to be a physical voice behind you, but if you hear physically, I will, or you hear it in your head, this ritual has started, baby. Now, you go into your safe room, the room with only one door. Ideally, the room should be empty of all objects, but if it is not, which most likely it isn't, you are supposed to close anything that could open. Closets, drawers, windows, doors, boxes, containers, bags. You get the picture. If you can open it, make sure it's closed. And it says in bold, do not miss anything. So this is important. Now you're going to leave your crucifix in the safe room. Now you need to move through the entire house and close every open object before midnight. So again, doors, windows, boxes, cupboards, like a Tupperware, everything that you can close. You gotta close. Super creepy part here. While you're doing this ritual, you might see a man with ashen skin in your peripheral vision. I think I'm just gonna have to deal with being broke because I don't want that. Anyways, you're not supposed to look at him. Don't look at him. Don't make eye contact with him. Ignore him. Go about your business and don't worry because he's not the Man in the Fields. I'm still worrying. Who is he? Why is his skin ashen? Why is he in my home? I thought I just summoned some scarecrow guy, not this ashen man. Anyways, he's apparently, I guess, more like a referee. This is a soccer game. He's your ref. Now, the biggest rule in the game is do not look in the backyard. Do not look in the backyard. Do not look in the backyard. Don't do it. Don't look out the window into your backyard. If you have to close the window that looks out onto your backyard, you better be focusing on the little spinny thing or have your eyes closed. You can't look in the backyard. If you're a dumb biatch and you did look in the backyard, it says if you see the scarecrow, he will also see you and he'll start crawling down from his post. That's creepy. From the moment he sees you, you have 60 seconds, known as 1 minute, to get into your safe room and fix this shit and close and lock the door. Find that crucifix and grasp it tightly. Hold it with all of your will. Pray you didn't leave anything in the room open. Do not open the door before 6 a.m. No matter what you hear, or don't hear outside. If you suddenly are hearing your grandma come to your house at 3 a.m. to bring you fucking soup, it's not your grandma. If you're hearing anyone who's like, it's fine, you know me, come out, you don't know them, and you're gonna die. Okay, I'm just kidding. You don't know that you're gonna die, but just don't do it because it's gonna be bad. If you do open the door before 6 a.m. because you think your grandma is there to bring you soup, if you do, the man in the fields will take something from you, something you need, something you can't get ahead without. Your head. He's gonna take your head. He's gonna take it. And unless you have a horse and a whip made of spines to become the headless horseman, your life is looking pretty bleak from here. Now, back to the ritual, as if you didn't look at the man. You didn't look at the man in the fields, the scarecrow man. You didn't look at him. Once everything is shut, you go to bed. Close your eyes and don't open them, it says. Okay, why? Why can I not open my eyes? Sleep if you can. And if you wake up in the morning, you won. You got that year of protection, of safety. And a little note, allegedly, a secluded house in the countryside with a field gives you stronger results. But what do you mean stronger results? That's what I want to know. Should we try to find stories of people who have tried this ritual? Let me know.
Louisiana is a spooky place. You know, at nighttime, I will not go out because there's a lot of creepy supernatural stuff that happens in New Orleans. Now, there's this woman named Sarah. Sarah said that she and her friends were down at the French Quarter. She said this one night they go to this bar and they're over in the corner just talking, having a good time. All of a sudden, this man walks through the door and he's dressed really nice. He's got this cape on. She said he was just this beautiful, immaculate looking person. And he just walked over by the bar and just stood there. And the whole night, her friends are talking to her and everybody's dancing and having a good time. But she could not take her eyes off this man. And she felt almost like she was in this trance. After about an hour, she gets this feeling she should go over and talk to him. So she walks over to where he's standing. She goes, "Hi, I'm Sarah." The man just turns. He walks out the front door. And she feels compelled to follow him. So she walks out behind him. And he goes out around the corner into the alley. And he goes back a ways. So she gets back there to where he's at. And she goes, "What are you doing out here? Why are you outside?" And this man turns and he grabs her by the shoulders and pushes her up against the wall. And he begins to try and go for her neck like he's getting ready to bite her. But then she hears her friends screaming her name. And when she looks, the man is gone. So she runs over to her friends and she's, in tears. And she goes, the man, he was going to get me. Like, I don't know who he was. And her friends were like, "Wait a second. What man? We seen you in the bar. You were talking to someone that wasn't there. You walked out of the bar by yourself and you went into the alley." And she swore up and down that she had seen this man, and for weeks, she could not get him out of her head. Now, New Orleans has also been a hotspot for paranormal activity, especially after the hurricanes hit. And shortly after Hurricane Katrina, there were a lot of strange things that happened. There was this older woman. She said she lived in the area close to where these dams had broken, and Lake Pontchartrain leaked into the city. She said one night, she was cooking dinner and she hears a knock at the front door. She goes to the front door, she answers it, and there's this small young girl in a purple dress, and she is completely wet, soaked in mud, and she's like, "Please, can you help me? I'm cold." And the woman said, "Absolutely, child, like, come inside." So she brings this girl inside and she sits her on the couch. She runs to go get her phone to call the police. But when she comes back to the living room, the girl is gone. She almost thought for a second that she had just imagined this, until she's seen these wet, muddy footprints leading from the porch to the couch. So what do you think? Is New Orleans a creepy place?
Y'all know the drill. It is time for another spooky story. I am Autumn in Appalachia. Send me your spooky stories. Add me on Facebook and subscribe on YouTube. Same handle. Without further ado, this story comes from Michaela. I will be tagging her in this video. Michaela said that she, when she was 13 years old, came face to face with the devil. She lived in Springfield, Ohio. At this time, she was at her mom's house. She said that around this age range, she was like getting in trouble a lot, kind of on the struggle bus, right? One morning, she wakes up to get ready for school. She is in her room and she cannot find a matching sock, which means that she has to go downstairs to the laundry area to find the matching sock. So that's what she does. She begins down the staircase, and she said that as soon as she hit the staircase, she got a feeling of unease that she couldn't quite put her finger on. With each step down that she took, the feeling intensified, and by the time she made it to the first floor, she said she's standing there, and from across the room she can see this black love seat that she has. Now, there's nothing on this love seat, but she has to walk past it to get to the laundry area, so she begins to make her way across the room, and by the time she gets to where she is beside this love seat, like actively walking by it, that is when she saw him. Out of her peripheral vision, she can very clearly see something suddenly sitting there on the couch, and she said that even though it was out of her peripheral, it was so clear. It's like you were seeing me right now. She said that the presence and the physical appearance of this thing was so menacing and so scary that it completely froze her. She was shocked. Every hair on her body stood on end, and she felt like she could not breathe. She said that this thing was sitting on the love seat. It had its arm propped up on the armrest, and that it is tapping its fingers. It was wearing like some sort of big robe, had a huge black hood over its head. It's like 6 to 7 foot tall, probably taller, long torso, long arms, and as she is looking at it, tapping its fingers, she notes that the fingers are unnaturally long as well as the fingernails. She said that she actually could not tell where the fingers ended and the fingernails began, and that the fingernails even curled under at the end because they were so long. She said that it was the most overwhelming fear she has ever felt in her entire life. Michaela said that the hood on its head was so big that its face was completely shrouded in darkness, so she could not make out any facial features. And now, looking back 20-some years later, she feels like that is one of the only things about this experience that gives her any semblance of sanity, because she thinks if she had actually seen it, like face to face, that she would have never recovered from it. She finally gets the courage up enough to dart, and she said she ran as fast as she could. The rest of the way to the laundry room, she grabs her sock, and when she turns back around, she does not see it anymore, but she can still feel that presence. She knows that she has to make it past that spot again in order to get out the front door for school. So she counts to 3, and she takes off running. She literally has like one shoe on, one shoe off, like running out the door, and as she is, she can feel this thing running behind her, chasing her out the door. She doesn't even close the door behind her. She gets to school and she is so terrified. She actually tells her school counselor and says, like, I refuse to go back home. I am way too scared. And they actually, at the end of the day, had to force her to go back home. That is how terrified she was. Now, she never saw this thing again, at least not that she's told me. And she said she has had other paranormal experiences over the years, but none that quite measure up to the gravity of that. She said there was something about that in particular, whatever it was, Reaper, the devil, a demon, that was just particularly terrifying. You guys let me know what you think in the comments. I have chill bumps on my arms. That is so creepy. It reminds me vaguely of some of the stories that we have done. It's our Scary Hospital playlist. If y'all have not checked that out, you need to. All of these stories come from people who have either been in the hospital or who are nurses and healthcare workers. Some of them come from my mom, actually, who has been a nurse for almost 30 years. There's one particular story about her time working in the ICU with the death angel that lived on that floor, and it reminds me a little bit of this story. Y'all let me know what you think in the comments, what your theories are, and I'll catch y'all in the next one.
So last night I shared a story about how my grandmother got burned in a dream, and I shared it because I saw this TikTok and I put it with it about this older man that he said that he felt someone grab his arm in the dark and burned his arm. And I got to thinking about when I was younger, how I had this very strange dream about my brother, who was not a baby at the time, but he was in the dream, he was a baby, and I was supposed to be taking care of him, and he was in a playpen that turned into a tank, and the baby bottle of grapefruit juice had exploded, filled the tank up, and he was drowning. And I remember jumping into this tank, and it became an ocean, a huge ass ocean. And I was trying to find him, and I finally could see him, and I start to grab him when I see a squid coming after me and hauling ass towards me. It was massive. It was massive. It was like literally like the Kraken, bitch. And then the next thing I knew, as I grabbed my brother to go to the surface to get out of there, this fucking tentacles just came wrapped around my leg, around my ankle specifically, and was trying to pull me down back into this darkness of this ocean of grapefruit juice. But it was fucking scary. Like, it was so fucking dark. And as it's pulling me down, I'm like really fighting against this fucking monster. I get to the surface and I breathe with my brother and I wake up. When I wake up, my ankle, my right ankle that this thing had grabbed me in the dream, was a big red circle of itchiness of like, it looked like somebody was squeezing really tight, and it hurt so bad. It was so itchy and it was so freaky. And I just remember sitting in my bed holding onto my ankle thinking to myself, Freddy Krueger can be real. Like Freddy Krueger can be real. Like, in your dreams, you can really go through some shit and fucking die. So that was the first time I realized that you can actually really hurt yourself if you're dreaming on some weird shit. Do I know what the fuck grabbed my ankle to this day? I have fucking no clue. Do I know why the fuck that old man has that burn mark? Probably a spirit, just like my grandmother. But all I know is dreams are not just dreaming.
I saw my landlady stood at my backyard just after midnight with blood running down her mouth. This sent chills down my spine. Story time. So I've been living in this apartment complex not long ago. The landlady is very old. She's elderly. She lives on her own. Apparently, her entire family lives abroad. She's the only person who lives there in the country and managing the properties. Her house is not far from the apartment complex, and funnily enough, is directly next to my apartment complex, so I can see her. She keeps herself to herself. On the odd occasion, she would often wave at me. I would wave back, but she never spoke. She never actually came out of the house. She keeps herself in her house. She rarely comes out. When you see her out, she's either watering plants or just sitting for a few minutes, and then she'll go back in her house. Then I started noticing these odd sounds just after midnight. It was rustling sound, as if something walking on leaves. But then, this particular night, I could hear someone giggling. And the giggles were as if they didn't want to make people know that they are there. They were trying to be discreet about it, very quiet about it. This went on for a few minutes, so I decided to get up and check. When I opened my curtains, I saw my landlady stood just closer to my backyard, the fence separating the houses. She was dressed in her dressing gown, but then it was falling off her. Then, all of a sudden, she bent over, as if she was doing something on the ground. At this point, I'm thinking, is she burying something, or what the heck is going on? All of a sudden, I hear the giggling again, coming from her. So I'm stood there watching everything. It was slightly darker, but I could see clearly what was going on. All of a sudden, she stood up and she looked directly towards my bedroom window. This freaked me out. But what I could see is blood running down her mouth, and it was covering her dressing gown. Her eyes looked darker. It was as if no eyeballs were in there. She also looked weird, and she waved at me. This is when I crouched down. I was scared. I didn't know what was going on here. After a couple of minutes, I stood up and I looked. She wasn't there. I looked to see what was going on the ground. I could not see properly. But tell me why I could hear frantic banging sounds on my front door. When I went and checked, no one was there. No sign of anyone outside. So I went back. The next morning, I checked my window to see what was going on. There was no sign of anything. But then again, the following night, at this time, it was almost 1 a.m. She was stood there again. But this time, the blood was dry, and I could see fresh blood dripping down from her mouth. She turned again, this time looking angry. Her wave didn't sit well. It was as if something was controlling her hands. I hid, my heart pounding very fast. But tell me why The banging sound comes again. But this time, when I open the door, I see a note covered in blood, the handwriting looking very shaky, and it read, "Mind your own business." I soon moved out of that apartment complex. But then again, I found myself going back there again. It was as if some sort of force were dragging me back to that place to see what was there. When I went, I checked the fence, the backyard, and I could not see anything. I did not see any signs of the landlady, so I decided to drive off. When I was driving off, I looked at my rear mirror. But tell me why she was stood there waving with a grin on her face. What the heck is that?
There's been a lot of creepy stuff that has been happening in Texas over the past couple of years. There was this woman named Deborah. Deborah was from a place just north of San Antonio, and she lived with her husband and daughter. Well, one night she was coming home late from the store, and she pulls into her driveway. She gets out of her car and she starts unloading groceries out of the trunk. All of a sudden, she starts to hear a rustling sound behind her. And out of these woods that were across the street from her house, she sees 3 children walk out. They are dressed in all black and they look sort of out of place. They proceed to walk up to her. And they have sort of this soft-spoken voice. "Ma'am, can we play with your daughter? Can we come inside and hang out with your daughter?" And she's like, "Who are you? Like, where did you come from?" They don't say anything. She goes, "Look, my daughter is like asleep, and you know it's late at night. Like, what are you guys doing out? Where are your parents?" They don't respond to that. They just keep asking her, "Can we come inside and play with your daughter?" So she's like, "Look, no, you cannot. Like, I don't know who you are. It's late at night. Like, you need to go back home." But they kept on, like, taunting her, saying, "Let us play with your daughter." And as she kept telling them no, they became more and more aggressive. So they started to yell insults and they started cussing her out. And she runs inside and gets her husband. Her husband comes out there thinking, like, who are these kids? When he gets outside, there's no one out there. So he comes in and he tells his wife, like, "Are you sure you've seen kids out there? Because it's just completely quiet. There's no one out there." But she's insistent that these kids were harassing her, asking to play with their daughter. So after a few weeks, she kind of forgets about all this. And she's at home one day. Her daughter's in the bedroom. And she overhears her daughter, like, laughing and giggling, like she's hanging out with someone in her bedroom. But she knows that it's just her and her daughter. So she calls for her daughter. And when her daughter comes to the living room, she asks, "Hey, like, what's going on in your room? Like, is there someone here? Like, why are you laughing and, like, giggling like you're playing with someone?" And she goes, "Oh, Mommy, like, my new friends, I invited them in and they came into my room and were playing." She goes, "What new friends?" And she goes, "I met them. They came from the woods across the street." And so instantly the mom's like, "Stay here." She runs to the bedroom. And when she opens the door, there's no one there. So she goes back to her daughter and says, who are these kids? Like, where did they go? She goes, "Mom, I don't know. They were in my room." She goes, I've been playing with them for the past couple of weeks." And so the mom is just like floored. Like, did she invite these kids that I seen outside in the house? So she tells her daughter, "You are not to hang out with them anymore until I talk to their parents and figure out, like, what's going on and talk to them about how they were harassing me." So the daughter agrees and she goes back to her bedroom. And So she leaves her house and she goes around to some of the neighbors and she starts asking them, like, do you know anything about these kids? And none of the neighbors know who these people are. And so she comes back to her house. And when she gets back to her house, it's now dark. She sees her daughter next to the woods across the street. So she immediately runs over to her. What are you doing? Like, why are you out of the house? She goes, oh, mommy, I'm going to play with the kids that were in my room. They told me to come in the woods. And so she tells her, no, you get in the house now. So she brings her in the house. And over the next couple of weeks, she keeps, hearing about these imaginary friends that she can't see that this girl's playing with. But she never, sees them again. And then one day they were driving and they were in this terrible accident. And the daughter got hurt really bad. So did the mother. And Deborah attributed that to this encounter she had with these strange children.
If you're new here, I say scary stories. This next story is a personal experience of mine, and we're gonna name it Strange Coincidence. Back when I was in high school, my then boyfriend went on a family trip to Mexico, to Michoacan to be exact. So I remember if I ever needed to get a hold of him, I would just have to ring his grandma's phone, and that's how I was able to talk to him. Same time, my mom's parents were visiting, and so was her brother. So me and my little sister got kicked out to the room in the garage where my brother would hear the baby crying. And we were kind of spooked to be in there. But we had no other choice. It was either that or the living room. So this one night, I remember calling him, and everything seemed normal, right? We're having a conversation, nothing out of the ordinary. So I've always loved vintage things. I used to go around shopping looking for them. And when I was in high school, I had bought this radio. It was a dial radio, right? So I was staying in that room with my sister, and after I hung up the phone, I just kind of lay there in bed, just thinking all kinds of things, right? When all of a sudden, the radio turned on. You had to manually turn this radio on. Then the dial starts moving back and forth. It's static at this point, when you're trying to find the station, you dial it to get to the correct one. And I started tripping out because, what do you mean? Who's controlling it? The radio's literally across the room from me. And it did this for a good, I would say 20 seconds before I jumped out of the bed and went to go get my mom. But of course, by the time my mom got there, it had stopped. But then my mom's throw the radio away, why do you want it, blah, blah. I don't even remember what I did with that radio. I must have ended up throwing it away. But then I thought, maybe something happened, whatever. I tried to brush it off. I didn't want to get scared. I didn't want to spook myself out more. I was already in that room. Then the next day, I call my boyfriend, right? And I guess I'm so excited to talk to him that I forget about the radio. So he did not live at his grandma's house. He would have to walk, maybe a 5-minute walk to get there. So he started saying how after we hung up, it was dark already. It must have been 10 o'clock in Mexico. He had to walk back home in the dark. And he started hearing noises of a bird flapping. So he said he started getting kind of scared, and he looked around, right? And when he looked up, he said there was this owl that was coming down, and it would flap its wings right on top of him, as to scare him or get his attention. So this freaked him out, and he said he started running. And to get to his house, it's a huge hill. It's so hard to run it. And I remember him telling me that he didn't even know how he got up there so fast. But the whole time he's running up, he said this owl was trying to come down and peck at him. Sorry. He said this owl was trying to come down and peck at his head. So it started freaking him out even more. So he said, I ran as fast as I could. I get to my house. And he said all night I could hear the owl making noises outside of my window. And the next day, I come to find out the owl had made a nest, like, outside of his window on the roof. So I guess the next day he told his parents, right, everything that happened. And his parents got a little spooked out. So I guess they, like, told his grandma. And so I guess his grandma's like, you need to, like, knock that nest down. And I guess they do it, right? I don't remember, like, in full details, but I do remember him saying that it was, like, a witch marking her territory. They believe that owl was a shaman, like a person that converts into an animal, and had, like, marked him. Could it have been just a coincidence that the radio was turning on its own? That he was getting chased by an owl? Or was it... Okay, now me getting something in my throat this whole video is spooking myself out. Let me know what you guys think in the comments.
Does anyone else feel like we shifted into another timeline or dimension? You know, if you grew up in the 80s or the 90s, like, it's really hard to explain to people what it felt like. But something changed. You know, I just remember the sun, right? It was brighter. There was just a different look to things. And I don't know how to explain it, but things just appeared different. Music sounded different. Cities were just, I remember they were beautiful and, like, immaculate. And I have all these, like, memories of just how things were. And it's almost like something changed along the way. And I really don't know how to explain it, but I'm sure a lot of other people feel the same exact way. And I mean, you know, like holidays, Christmas, Halloween, like it felt so real, so alive, and you felt good inside. And it almost felt like we were in some kind of movie that was just perfect. And then something turned on, and here we are now, and everything just kind of seems dull and gray. That excitement is gone. But do you get what I'm saying? Where, like, things just look different. Like, the coloration is all wrong, and places seem all wrong, and movies are different than I remember it. You know, like, I watch older films that I grew up with in the 80s and 90s, you know, like my favorite movies and shows. And when I watch them, they just don't have that same feel. Like, it feels like they've changed. So I'm just curious, does anyone else feel like things are different? Like we shifted into another timeline or dimension? Have you heard of the fake house theory? So there's these people who believe that the cities and towns that we live in are not as big as we actually think. And that within these cities and towns, there are these fake houses and fake businesses that are sort of put there as props. And you know, as I started to think about it more, I live in a town of 10,000 people. But in the past 7 years that I've been here, I've probably only encountered a couple hundred people. And when I've lived in other cities, right, the amount of people that I've seen has been very limited, very small. So are our cities and towns actually much smaller? Like, are there all these empty houses that are just essentially props and businesses that don't exist? And basically we are living in one big lie. Now, it's easy to get under the illusion of the actual size of a town or city. Because when you think about it, if you go to a stadium, right? When you see that stadium packed, it looks like there's 1 million people there. But they can only hold up to like 60, 80,000. But to you, it appears like that's millions and millions of people. And so it would be easy to be deceived and think, oh, this town has millions of people, or, you know, this city has millions of people, but I only see so many people all the time. So what do you think? Are we living in cities and towns that are fake.
I need to tell you guys this ghost story. This story was sent into my email, and if you have any ghost stories, paranormal encounters, or scary stories that you want to share, you can send them to the email in my bio. My friends kept seeing a man standing in my bathroom. This started about 2 years ago when I moved into a new house. Nothing about the home shouted possible haunting. It wasn't built on a burial site. It had never been abandoned. There were no crimes the realtor tried to cover up. It was seemingly just a normal house at first. The first signs were almost easy to dismiss. My friends would come over, we'd be hanging out, and randomly someone would go quiet and then ask me, "The guy in your bathroom." I'd laugh. What guy? And every single time they described the same thing. A man, extremely tall, like so tall that his head should have brushed the ceiling. Just standing there, silent and motionless, watching. Different people, separate visits, same description. And now that I think back, that should have disturbed me more than it did. But I had never seen him myself, so naturally I convinced myself that all of the people in my life were just collectively playing some weird joke on me. It was the only logical explanation I could come up with, even though there really was no logic to it at all. Until one night, I found myself waking up around 3 a.m., and the house was eerily quiet. There was no hum from my ceiling fan, no stray cricket chirps from the corner of a room, no cars, no dogs, not even the wind or the trees. Complete stillness. And while I was realizing all of this, I also realized that I needed the bathroom. So, half asleep, I got up and I opened the door and froze. Because there, in the corner, was a man. Was the man. Tall isn't even the word I would use to describe what I was looking at. Stretched would have been more appropriate here. Wrong, like a shadow that had been pulled just to the limit of excessive. His head nearly reached the ceiling, and he was standing completely stock still. But his eyes were focused. Not at me, but unmoving, just like the rest of him. There, in the corner, just there. I remember my whole body locking up and waiting for my brain to send some sort of signal to the rest of me for what to do next, but the fear hit before a rational thought could, and I started to recite explanations in my mind that would help this situation. You're dreaming. Your eyes are adjusting. It's something else you can't really make out in the dark. And in repeating my new mantras, I reached for the switch, clicked the light on, and was horrified when the flood of comfort did nothing. He was still there, exactly where and as he had been when the lights were off. My brain finally caught up, and that's when panic took over. I slammed the door, backed away, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I stood outside of that bathroom for what felt like forever. And when I was able to muster up the courage, I opened the door again. Empty. Gone. Like he had never been there at all. And after that night, everything changed. I'd pass the bathroom and feel watched. I started catching movement in my peripheral vision, but I'd turn to focus on it and nothing would be there. And then things started escalating. Objects would fall off of shelves. Doors would open slowly by themselves, footsteps in the hallway at night pacing back and forth. People would stay over, and almost every single one would bolt awake in the middle of the night, terrified, sweating and gasping after experiencing nightmares so vivid that they felt real. And a few woke with scratches, thin red marks on their arms or legs. Eventually, I had had enough. And I felt that I wanted answers, so I made a decision that I almost regret. My friends and I set up a camera, mostly to prove to ourselves that it was all paranoia. We aimed it at the room and went to bed. The next morning, we watched the footage. At first, everything was as we hoped it would be. Completely normal, just footage of all of us fast asleep. Hours passed and still nothing. And when we were about to breathe our sigh of relief, one of my friends paused the video and whispered, "What is that at the foot of the bed was a shape, stepping slowly into frame, and I knew. It was him, the tall man, towering beside the bed, staring at us all as we slept.
Let's talk about the time I bought a vintage suit for a show that I was designing costumes for, and something followed me back to the costume shop. So some of you may or may not know that by day I'm a costume designer, and by night I love to research and investigate the paranormal. Little did I know that that would merge into my day job. So it's spring of 2018, I was hired to design costumes for a show that was taking place in the 1940s. The director, amazing but very specific. He wanted his lead man to be in a double-breasted, three-piece, bluish gray 1940s pristine suit. The only catch is our leading man is actually quite petite, the little Tom Cruise. He is 5'5" with a 36-inch chest, so he's a 36 short in suit. And I'm thinking, cool, like where am I gonna find that? In Los Angeles. Oh, Burbank, Magnolia Boulevard. Head over there, my day of shopping for the show, and no joke, by fate, the first shop that I walk into, there's the suit. The owner tells me that she just bought this suit along with other items from an estate sale that morning. The gods were on my side. It was a 36S. Suit was immaculate. It was perfect, perfectly preserved, and inside the inner pocket, along with the size of the suit, were these embroidered initials CMK. This is where things get weird. I bring back the suit to the shop, and ever since then, for the past 4 days, I would notice suits in our suit aisle landing on the floor. They would just be on the floor whenever I would come in the morning. Okay, but fast forward to the fitting. Now, this is where things get really creepy. I have this actress that comes in, she's being fitted for the show, and we get to talking. In mid-conversation, she mentions to me that she is a psychic medium, and I'm like, of course you are, yes. She looks at me dead serious in the face, and she's like, you have a man in the shop. Here's where my stomach drops to the floor. She's like, did you recently purchase a suit? And I said, yes. And she said, yeah, his name is Chester. And I'm like, thinking back to the embroidered initials CMK. And then I tell her, is he the one dumping the suits on the floor in the suit aisle? And she's like, yeah, he's looking for his suit. Look, if I were you, after work, I would stand in the aisle and have a chat with him and just tell him that you need the suit for this performance, that you promise you'll take care of it. This was not in my job description, but okay. So I took her advice. I did just that. Had a little kiki with Chester. I told him, look, Chester, we're doing this show that is going on stage pretty soon. We have an actor who's making his debut on the stage for the first time, and he's wearing your suit. And just like that, the suits stopped landing on the floor and the show went very well. Honestly, I think that Chester was really happy that his suit was being used again. If you do like stories like this that have elements of costume design and ghost stories, then you definitely want to follow my channel, Haunted Thread, where I design and construct costume pieces based off of famous ghosts and ghost stories, much like this one right here. So stay haunted, stay weird, and beware whenever you buy something from a vintage store.
Lip gloss on, and I'm about to run the hell out of my mouth today because this is wild.
Scary story time, like big time.
I think it's safe to say that love has made us all act out a character, a time or two in the past, but I have never sounded like I was auditioning for the next horror film, because what is this? Now, a little backstory on this, the guy in the video, right? He used to be married to her. That was like his ex whatever. I don't know. They have kids together. They have to share custody of the kids. Well, he's since remarried, and old girl is not happy about it. He's talking about all of these voicemails that she left him and how he's scared and stuff. Now, normally I would automatically be like, are you? Like, what's really going on? But he should be, because this, I have never heard anything like it. I don't know how she's changing her voice to sound like that. I don't know what she's got going on. At one point, all you can make out is like, you're a lie. I don't know. It's scary. It's scary. And the fact that it came from a cop body cam makes it even scarier, because you know that this actually happened. And she called him 17 times from 1:44 in the morning till 2 a.m. He said that if he hadn't have had the kids with him, he would have really been scared. But just listen.
How has she been doing this?
That is so scary. She is going through it. I would freak out. I would freak out. Something like, you married me? And don't come for me saying clearly she's going through it. Obviously, we know that, but it is scary nonetheless. I've never heard anyone like change their voice like that. Clearly something is wrong. Something is wrong. She is mentally unwell. We can tell that. But I have never heard someone change the different pitches. She goes from sounding like a little girl to sounding like herself to sounding like that deep thing or whatever. Something that is scary. I don't know if it's something that's going on or if something else like has taken over. I don't know. What do you guys think? Let me know.
I thought my son had an imaginary friend until my neighbor told me what happened in our house. Back in 2016, we moved into a house. It was on the market for way cheaper than any other house that was around the area, and I assumed that I just got lucky. I was pregnant with my daughter at the time, and I had my 3-year-old son. Not long after we had moved in, my son started to talk about his new friend, and his friend's name was Jojo. At first I didn't think very much of it. Imaginary friends for little kids are somewhat normal, right? Until things started to feel a little bit off. At some point, whenever I'd give my son a bath, he would cry and he would beg me not to plug the drain. This wouldn't be so weird if before this he absolutely loved baths. Like, he loved them. So it's super weird for him to not want the drain to be plugged. Anyway, so I would just let the water run lightly as I washed him, and he would just sit there and watch the drain. Then one night during dinner, he did something that felt very weird and eerie. He started to set up a second plate for food, and I asked who that's for, and he said, "It's for my friend Jojo. He hasn't eaten in days." I tried taking the plate away, just assuming that he was just playing around, and he got really upset with me, and he said, "No, this plate is for Jojo. He has not eaten in days. He's so hungry." That night I had a hard time sleeping, and the next day I brought it up to my neighbor, and she got kind of quiet, and she just looked at me and she said, "What was the name of the imaginary friend?" I told her the name was Jojo, and she just kind of stared at me, and she said, "There used to be a little boy who lived in that house, and his name was Joseph," and my stomach dropped. Then she proceeded to tell me what happened, and she said Joseph's mother drowned him in the bathtub, and before that he was severely malnourished. I did not stay in the house very long after that, and to this day, I still think about that drain and how my son would not let me plug it.
I need you guys to hear me loud and clear. So there's no music. This is just me and you. You gotta listen. The whole Spirit Airlines thing that's going on, it's nothing to joke about. It's not something to take lightly. This is the beginning of something that's incredibly important. And we need to stay focused. First of all, you guys remember this lady? This lady right here? She's a lost hero. Yes. It's about time that we actually go to her, find her page, here on TikTok, Instagram, wherever. She deserves an apology. And she deserves a thank you, a simple thank you. Thank you for saying and telling people what you saw that day. Thank you for panicking. Thank you for staying strong, and point your finger at this being that you saw in that airplane. I know that like they got to her fast as they could to make her seem crazy, you know, to tell us that she was like, I don't know, intoxicated, that she was delusional, like they always do. They always do that. And but due to her panicking, she was able to save lives in that airplane. And I'm going to tell you how. Because if she did not see what she saw, who knows what would have happened to that airplane, that flight? Who knew what would have happened that day? But because of her panic, the entire plane actually got shut down. People were, you know, in that flight were safe to make it to their destination and nothing happened. Because had something happened, we would be having a whole different conversation right now. But let's get back to the whole Spirit Airlines situation. A lot of people actually lost their jobs. You know, the entire headline is actually, shut down, which is very unfortunate. But I need you guys to pay a lot more attention to what's going on. And I said it in my last video, air traffic is getting shut down. And then it's slowly being limited right now. And it's not just Spirit. I got many comments, many people coming forward in the comments from the last video, and they saying that like they've been to airports, even after like the whole shenanigan that was going on with airports, not having enough employees, and then ICE has to come in and help out. Well, it's still affected. I have a friend who's actually a flight attendant, and this morning, I'm pretty sure she didn't see my video at all, but this morning, as usual, she always posts, like stuff about, her job, checking in at the airport and stuff. And she said the airport just seemed weird. And then her flight the first flight only had 4 people traveling. People are not traveling at this point due to lack of flights. Maybe like, people actually start seeing the, like what's happening, with air traffic, and they taking a step back. Maybe, like whoever's doing this, whoever's behind it all, this entire like spiritual warfare thing that's going on right now, they moving at such a fast pace that we actually getting caught up. We're seeing it. We're catching on to it. And I've been having a bunch of weird dreams about this, and that's why I'm digging into this whole situation. And I'm like, I gotta talk about it. And I can see in the comments, a lot of people actually coming up front. They saying what they saying for a reason. It's because we're so spiritually connected, especially right now. Like these things cannot just go and then we just brush it off. We can't. I'm telling y'all, this year, this is our last Thanksgiving. This is our last Christmas spending together with your family. Being able to travel from, another land to another. Being able to go overseas, go to your country that you're from, visiting your family. We are told that this is our last, American presidency. There's a reason behind it. We are handing over our entire existence to these beings. Are actually, we were told they're coming, and they're coming from the sky. And when they come, they want to keep us as grounded as we can, as they can, so there's no panic. So little by little, they're giving us a little bit of truth. They're showing us a little bit of like what reality is as a whole. And the dreams I've been having, they actually completely connected to exactly what they're doing. And I know I'm not the only one. This whole Spirit Airlines thing is just like a little bit of fraction of what's coming, especially with air trafficking. Like, this is it for us. We are going to be grounded. Wherever we are, that's it. This will be our reality from now on. As soon as that the sky is open and all these beings are actually coming from different dimension, different reality, wherever you are, this is where you're going to be able to fight. That's it. Don't tell me that I'm like, I don't know, I'm scaring people. No, that's not what I'm doing. I just want people to know the truth. I just want people to be more spiritually connected. I just want people to actually listen more, open your eyes, especially look at the sky. Keep an eye on the sky. When you see things, speak about it. Be vocal. Stop wasting your energy on negative energy. Start focusing more on yourself, your surrounding. Be more open-minded, be more positive. It's the only thing that we can do. If they can't feed off our energy, they can't do anything to us. Nothing. I don't care what kind of being that's coming in, good or bad. They can't do anything to us. I've been in this world for 35 years now. And since then, I've been seeing different type of beings my whole life. One thing I never do, I never panic. I never let them in and feed on my energy. So I always find myself to be more powerful than them because they don't belong here. We do. I do. So you still remain the power. You know, you still remain vocal. You still remain more energetic, more controlling over them. You don't give that back, you'll be fine.
Might have known the story of real-life boogeyman.
A 14-year-old girl goes missing, is missing for over 4 years, and then in 2023, she comes back. On the morning of September 13th, 2019, 2 days before she would disappear, Alicia Navaro told her mother that she was feeling a little bit more anxious than usual. She asked if she could skip school that day. Her mother, Jessica Nunez, agreed. She took Alicia to McDonald's to get her favorite meal. The two of them spent the day together doing activities that Alicia liked, and then they returned home that afternoon. By all accounts, it was a good day, normal day, and a day that Alicia's mom would replay in her head over and over and over again, wondering if she missed something. Alicia Navaro was 14 years old. She lived with her mother, her stepfather, and her two younger siblings in Glendale, Arizona. She had been diagnosed with high-functioning autism at a very young age, and because of that, she relied heavily on her mother for a lot of things, a big one being reassurance in social situations. Alicia was the kind of girl that liked what she was used to. She loved routine. She was very selective about her food, and any change to her schedule would cause her anxiety to go up significantly. Her daily routine was eating the same meals every day, wearing either long-sleeved shirts or hoodies every day, regardless of the temperature outside, and going to and from the same places every single day. She didn't have many close friends at school, given that any face-to-face, in-person interaction could very easily overwhelm her, but online, playing video games, she was different. She was around 10 or 11 years old when she started spending more time on the internet, and it made sense. She really liked it because it made her feel comfortable. She could still play games and socialize with other kids online without having the added pressure of having to stand in front of someone making eye contact. She just preferred it, and it also made her feel safe because it was something that she could do from the comfort of her own home. Her mother said Alicia's otherwise introverted personality took on a different kind of energy when she would play games online. She also described her to be very intelligent, very shy, but very, very kind. Quote, "My daughter was a really loving and caring person. Everywhere she went, if it was an animal or a person, she cared," end quote. And as supportive as her mother Jessica was in regards to doing whatever made Alicia happy, and even though the two of them were best friends apart from just being mother and daughter, Jessica was her mother at the end of the day, and safety always came first. Which is why when she found out that Alicia had been sharing personal information on an internet chat at one time, she sat her down and she explained to her how you shouldn't be talking to strangers online. Explaining that you really don't know who the person is that is behind the screen and that you don't know what their intentions could be. Saying, look, have fun all you want, play the games that you want to play, just do not share anything personal about you, your family, where you live, anything like that online. By 2019, Alicia Navaro was 14 years old and she was a freshman in high school, and she was still the same in regards to her daily routine, eating the same foods, going to school, coming home to play video games. But in regards to her appearance, there were some changes that her mom started to notice in her. She started to express interest in makeup and different clothing items that were not all long sleeved like she was used to. She would talk about hanging out with friends outside of school, which was huge, and she also showed interest in a specific comic book and a protein powder, which may sound kind of random, but that's my point. She started talking about certain things that she had never really talked about before, on top of being interested in changing things about her appearance. It was different. She was different. But also, freshman in high school, that is peak of when a teenager starts to figure out what she likes, what she doesn't like. So changes in a girl her age are expected given that she's now entering this new phase of her life. The night of September 14th, 2019, Alicia was in her room. She played video games until a little bit after midnight. Sometime before 1 a.m., she went downstairs for a glass of water. Her mom was still awake downstairs. She was waiting for her husband to get home from work, aka Alicia's stepdad. He worked night shifts, but Jessica saw her daughter. Alicia looked happy, normal. She asked her mom when she was planning on going to sleep, saying that she needed to make sure that she got enough sleep. They chatted for a minute until Alicia eventually went back upstairs. Alicia's stepdad got home around 2 in the morning, and him and Jessica eventually fell asleep as well. That night was the last time that Jessica Nunez saw her daughter. The next morning, Jessica noticed that Alicia wasn't coming downstairs at the time when she normally would have. They went to go check on her, and she wasn't in her bed. After the immediate shock and confusion, things only got weirder, because Jessica noticed that there was something on Alicia's bed. It was a note. She left a note on her pillow that read, quote, "I ran away. I will be back. I swear. I'm sorry," end quote. You can imagine the shock and the big wave of concern that absolutely consumed Jessica when she read that note. Not only because Alicia was only 14 years old and had no business sneaking out, but she was also the kind of girl that did not feel comfortable at all in new places, in the dark, in the middle of the night, nor with anyone else apart from her mom, basically. Alicia had a routine. She had always had one and she followed it religiously because if something out of the ordinary happened, she didn't handle it well. And she had been that way kind of her entire life. So what in the world could have made her walk away from her bedroom, from her house on her own accord? Jessica and the stepdad searched the neighborhood immediately, and when they peeked around their house, they found something in the backyard. Chairs that had been stacked up against the brick wall, and shoe prints matching Alicia's size leading up and over the fence. Alicia had also taken a small black backpack with cat ears, a sweatshirt, a pair of shoes, makeup, a body spray, her iPhone, and her MacBook, but she had left behind the charges to all of those. That detail in itself proved to be a very significant one because you don't forget your chargers if you're planning on running away and being gone for a while. You don't take your chargers with you if you do plan on coming back and you know that you won't need them, but you could forget them if someone was waiting for you outside and you needed to leave fast. Maybe you forget them if you're in a hurry or if you think that wherever you are headed will have whatever you need. What was interesting as well was that Alicia had walked down a path that was not covered by the neighbor's surveillance camera. Whether she did that on purpose or not, we don't know for sure, but it felt like a very big possibility that she had planned this or that somebody else had planned it for her. Glendale police were notified that morning. The case grew very, very quickly. The FBI got involved. A $20,000 reward was offered. Billboards went up, not only in Arizona, but also in California. Jessica herself had them put up in Nevada, Texas, and Mexico too, anywhere she thought that Alicia might be seen. But there was nothing. No phone activity, no social media activity, no trace, no leads. Jessica herself said from very early on that she believed that Alicia could have been talking to a stranger online, someone that may have been encouraging her to leave her house that night. Quote, according to the evidence, I do believe that she was lured online, end quote. And the evidence did support her. Remember, months before the disappearance, Jessica had discovered that Alicia had been chatting with someone online and given them information that she should not be giving out to strangers. Come to find out, the person that she was talking to was a man that was much older than her. Who that man was is unclear, which makes me think that there was little to no information on whatever online profile he had. There was also the fact that one of Alicia's friends had mentioned to authorities that Alicia had mentioned that she was planning on running away, and she had also mentioned something about having a burner phone. Another one of Alicia's friends mentioned that she had mentioned to him that she had a boyfriend. There was also a witness that came forward early on in the investigation saying that they believed that they had seen Alicia walking around the area with a much older man. But other than that, authorities didn't really have much to go off. There was little to no evidence that was proving to be actually beneficial. And it was a tricky one because as weird as it seemed, as far off as it would have been for Alicia to have wanted to leave on her own accord, any sort of clues or witness statements to authorities in their eyes did feel like she had left on her own accord. She was 14 though. Weeks turned into months, months turned into a year, then 2 years, then 3 years. Alicia's last words to her mother were written on that piece of paper. I ran away. I will be back. I swear I'm sorry. In September of 2022, her mom Jessica stated, quote, I'm still waiting for her to fulfill her promise, end quote. Jessica never stopped. She hired private investigators. She partnered with a Florida-based nonprofit that works with online cases like Alicia. She kept buying billboards. She kept talking to the media. She kept going because there was no world in which Jessica was just going to accept that her daughter was gone. And then, on Sunday, July 23rd, 2023, 1,407 days after Alicia walked over that backyard wall and left her house, something happened that nobody expected. A young woman walked into the Montana Police Department, a small town roughly 35 miles from the Canadian border, and identified herself as Alicia Navaro. She said that she had been reported missing and that she wanted to clear her status. She was 18 years old. Crazy. Amazing that she was alive, obviously, but crazy. That police station contacted Glendale police immediately, and 3 days later, Glendale police held a press conference, quote, Alicia Navaro has been located. She is by all accounts safe, she is by all accounts healthy, and she is by all accounts happy, end quote. Of course, this was the best news. I mean, there are no words to explain the relief that Jessica felt when she heard that her daughter was still alive, yet a million questions that needed to be answered. Where had she been? Who had she been with? What happened that night all the way back in 2019? Why Montana and why now? Detectives spoke to Alicia by video conference. The exchange was pretty brief and authorities released 27 seconds of it. Quote, did anyone hurt you in any way? No, no one hurt me. Okay, because our goal is we just want to make sure that you're safe. I understand that. Thank you for offering to help me, end quote. Jessica posted a video on Facebook shortly after the return of Alicia was announced, quote, I do feel that I owe this video to the community and to God. I want to give glory to God for answering prayers and for this miracle. For everyone who has missing loved ones, I want you to use this case as an example. Miracles do exist. Never lose hope and always fight, end quote. She also said that she herself didn't have any details, but that the important thing was that Alicia was alive. But this was not a quick ending, case closed. It was, as Glendale PD said at the time, quote, probably only the beginning of where this investigation will go, end quote. Alicia was located in Montana. Her family, if you remember, lived in Arizona, and she stayed in Montana after she went to the police station to say, hey, it's me, I'm alive, I'm here. So her mom had to identify her, or was able to identify her through FaceTime, but she had not yet seen her in person. And again, so many questions still left unanswered. When police officers in Montana arrived to investigate, they found that Alicia had not been alone. She had been living in an apartment with a man by the name of Edmund Davis, 36 years old at the time, in his apartment. And neighbors of his told investigators that the two of them had been living together for at least a year. Police officers were able to get a search warrant to search Edmund's apartment, and that's when things got dark, for lack of a better word. When officers arrived, Alicia was the one to answer the door. Officers saw Edmund in the kitchen in the background throwing a cell phone into a trash can and placing items on top of it as if he was trying to hide it. In other words, he was caught in real time trying to throw away evidence. The phone and other electronic devices were seized. Forensic investigators went through them, and on them they found a lot of material and evidence related to CP, from as young as 5 years old to 13. In October of 2023, Edmund Davis was charged with 2 felony counts of SA of children. However, investigators were careful to note that those charges were not formally connected to Alicia's case. That said, he was the man that she had been living with, and he had spent years, possibly beginning when she was 14 years old, if not younger, in contact with her. In September of 2024, he pled guilty to 1 out of the 2 counts, and on February 11th of 2025, he was sentenced to 100 years in the Montana State Prison with 50 years suspended. He will not be eligible for parole for another 25 years, I believe. Jessica Nunez responded publicly, quote, I'm very happy that he is behind bars and he won't cause any more harm. I can't recover the years that I was not with her, and I cannot change the trauma, but I can appreciate my daughter is alive and that we are healing. From what I could find, we do know that Alicia and her mom were eventually reunited in person. However, authorities, I don't think to this day, have said how Alicia ended up in Montana, and Edmund Davis has not been charged in connection with her disappearance. So whatever happened in those 4 years, whatever was said to her online, whatever promises were made, and whatever she experienced inside of that apartment in Montana is still not fully known to the public. And honestly, because she is alive and well and happy and healthy and with her family, I don't think that it should be, because if, say it was something bad, and being in an apartment with a man like that, I doubt anything good happened inside of the apartment. Say it was traumatizing, which it probably was, she needs to heal, and having the worst experience of her life all over the media and all for the public to read all the details and everything that happened, that can't be good for her. So maybe it is good that we don't know. I'm happy to say that the latest update that I could find is that Alicia is now working, receiving counseling, and preparing to attend college. She is, I think, around 20 years old now, maybe 21. But yeah, everything says that she is healing, she's with family, she's working on getting some sense of normalcy now, which is all that you can hope for, and I hope that she is well and happy. We've covered cases on my page before where I'm like, this is crazy, and then sometimes it happens that I look into it and then I have more questions. But I'm just relieved that that man is behind bars, because ew. Yeah, that is all I have for today. Thank you for spending time with me today and for listening to Alicia's story. Hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. And I mean it when I say that. Like, if you are not having a good day, go do something that you know makes you happy. Go for a walk, go buy yourself ice cream, get yourself a treat. You deserve it. And I will see you guys in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.